Welcome back to the show today. We are talking about what makes a good NBA draft. As you know, a lot of people were pretty critical of last year's NBA draft class. There were no clear standout draft picks. And it's not because there were so many skilled players that no one knew who to pick. It's because no players stood out as having potential to be a franchise changer, like in most drafts. For instance, this year, there are 3 or 4 guys who likely would have gone first in last year's NBA draft. So let's talk about some of these guys. Let's figure out why people are going full Krispy Kreme on them. The first member of this year's draft we have to talk about is obviously Cooper Flagg. Cooper Flagg is unanimously the #1 pick. The Mavericks, by the grace of God, were granted the #1 pick. So he is most certainly going to be a Dallas Maverick next year, unless Nico Harrison has a trick up his sleeve. But what separates him from the rest of the draft? Like I said, there are a lot of good players in the draft, but what sets him apart? Well, Cooper has been a draft prospect since he was a sophomore in high school. In 2022, he played for the U17 World Cup team. He averaged 9 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 blocks a game as a 15-year-old. He was one of the youngest players in the tournament, but he was also one of the biggest players in the tournament. He transferred to Montverde High School. That's where all the NBA top recruits go. You know, Cade Cunningham, Ben Simmons, Scotty Barnes. And he was so good that he reclassified after his sophomore year. So he became a high school senior immediately. As a matter of fact, Cooper actually had a D1 offer when he was in 8th grade. But personally, I think Cooper became the certified #1 pick last summer when he was on the US National Select Team. Basically, the practice squad for the US Olympic team. He was only 17 years old, but he was hanging, man. He wasn't lighting anyone's ass up, but he was definitely one of the guys. The main takeaway being he was able to match the physicality of guys like LeBron James, Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum. So even outside of his college career, NBA scouts already knew this guy was ready for the league. So how about we compare last year's NBA #1 overall pick to this year's pick? Let's talk about Zachary Risacher coming into the NBA. Risacher was all promise and potential. He was playing in the French League before he entered the draft. He won multiple Best Young Player of the Year awards in the French League and in the Euro Cup. And that's the thing. He was good, but he was good for a young player. He wasn't even a starter in the French League, but he was putting up decent stats for a bench guy. When you saw him play, you saw the faint outline of a 3-and-D player. But the talent was theoretical. He was not NBA ready when he was being scouted. Interestingly enough, Cooper Flagg and Risacher played in that under-17 tournament for FIBA. Cooper Flagg led the tournament in blocks, he won the gold medal, and he was on the all-tournament team. And Zach Risacher did okay. He averaged 10 points a game, got a couple assists. France took home the bronze medal. Not bad, but one thing to keep in mind is Risacher was 17, while Cooper Flagg was 15. So Risacher, the year before he was drafted, was a 6th man in the French League. Compare that to Luka Doncic. Before the NBA, Luka was playing for the most prestigious club in Europe, Real Madrid. And Real Madrid won the Euro League, and he was the Euro League MVP. Keep in mind, Luka was not the first pick overall his draft year. He was 3rd. Now, let's talk about what Cooper Flagg did last year in college. Cooper Flagg averaged 19 points, 4 assists, and 7 rebounds. Also, remember, college games are shorter than NBA games. He also shot 48% from the field and 84% from the free throw line. College players typically can't shoot free throws very well. That's just a personal observation I've made while doing this. He took the Duke Blue Devils to 19-1 in the ACC. He won the National College Player of the Year Award, the ACC Player of the Year Award. He won the Julius Erving Award, Lute Olson Award, and the Wayman Tisdale Award. I don't know what any of those awards are, but he won them. So this year in the draft, Cooper is the unanimous #1 pick, but there is also a unanimous #2 pick. There's Dylon Harper, son of 5-time NBA champion Ron Harper, for my old heads out there. In high school, Dylon Harper was a 5-star recruit. ESPN even had him above Cooper Flagg the summer before his senior year. He was getting offers from Duke, Kansas, Indiana, all the schools. But Dylon chose to go to Rutgers University instead. Rutgers was not known for having a stellar basketball program. As a matter of fact, before 2022, the Scarlet Knights had not been to the NCAA tournament in 30 years. So why would a top-tier draft prospect not go to a school that was known for developing one-and-dones like Duke or Kentucky? Well, it tells you something about Harper. He chose Rutgers because his brother went there. His brother was a part of that team that made the NCAA tournament. He knew the coach, he was from that area in New Jersey, and he felt like the team had his back. He also chose Rutgers because his fellow draft classmate was committed there, Ace Bailey. Evidently, head coach Steve Nash had a real way with recruiting. He convinced both these guys to come to his program. Apparently, he made them both feel like they were a part of something bigger than a basketball program. He also played up the fact that they could be a part of building something new, as opposed to going to a place like Duke or UConn where they already had established programs. Now, both Harper and Bailey had great seasons at Rutgers. They had some good stats, they had some killer highlight reels. But one strike against both players is Rutgers wasn't good last year. They finished below 500 and 8-12 in the Big Ten, obviously not making the NCAA tournament. It didn't hurt Harper's draft stock. He's still probably going to go #2 overall. But Ace's stock went down a little bit since last summer. It seemed like he was in the 2 or 3 position. But now people are talking about VJ Edgecombe possibly sneaking up to that 3rd spot. VJ is a guy that made the tournament and at least won 1 game. Now, let's talk about the weakest draft class in NBA history. Some of you newer NBA fans probably think it was 2013, the year Anthony Bennett went #1. But it's not, because we got some all-time greats from that year. First of all, Giannis was in that draft. NBA champion, 2-time MVP, defensive player of the year. Also, Rudy Gobert, a 4-time defensive player of the year. Probably gonna be a Hall of Famer too. And also, don't sleep on Victor Oladipo. He had his day in the sun. So the worst draft class was not 2013. Now, old heads remember the 1986 draft. This draft class came directly after some of the greatest draft classes ever. 1984 with MJ, Hakeem, and Chuck. 1985 with Patrick Ewing, Karl Malone, Joe Dumars, Chris Mullin. The best player in the 1986 draft was probably Arvydas Sabonis. And he didn't even play in the league until 1985, 9 years after he was drafted. The only other Hall of Famer from this draft class was Dennis Rodman. Rodman only scored 6,600 points for his career, but 5 titles and 12,000 rebounds will get you a spot in the Hall of Fame. So the worst draft class isn't 1986 either. The worst NBA draft class of all time is 2000. This class had a couple of guys, a couple of basketball players, a couple of guys that got on the court and did some basketball. Nothing spectacular, but goddamn if they weren't professional athletes. Number 1 pick in this draft was Kenyon Martin. Kenyon made an all-star team 1 time in his career, and he's arguably the best player in this draft. Michael Redd was a 2nd-round pick that year, and he's the only player to make an All-NBA team, and it was a 3rd-team All-NBA. Mike Miller was the Rookie of the Year that year. He was the 5th pick overall. He's a 2-time champion and a 6th Man of the Year. You also got Jamal Crawford, a 3-time 6th Man of the Year. But that's it, man. That is the best of them. That's the whole damn class. And it's not even like there were a lot of dudes that had really long careers in this class. Top picks like Stromile Swift and Darius Miles barely even played 9 years in the league. This draft class was cursed. Now, what's the greatest NBA draft of all time? I know some of you old heads are saying it's 1984. You had John Stockton, all-time assists and all-time steals leader. You had Charles Barkley, league MVP. You had Hakeem Olajuwon, the only player to ever be MVP, Finals MVP, and Defensive Player of the Year in 1 year. And then, of course, basketball Jesus, Michael Jordan. And by now, if I have to read out his accolades, I'm not doing my job very well. The best draft class of all time, though, was not this class. So now you're thinking, the best draft class of all time is probably 2003. It's gotta be the class of LeBron, Melo, Wade, and Bob. No, it's not that class either. Because the thing about this draft class is it did have a couple really incredibly talented players. But that's about it. Most of the players in the draft class were scrubs. The greatest draft class of all time is by far 1996. And it's not even close. First pick overall, Allen Iverson, 11-time All-Star, League MVP, and 4-time scoring title champion. Then you got Ray Allen, 2nd most 3-pointers of all time and a 2-time champion. 2-time League MVP and 5-time assist leader Steve Nash. 5-time NBA champion and 2-time Finals MVP Kobe Bryant. Maybe you've heard of him. Also, Hall of Famer Ben Wallace was in this draft class, but he wasn't even drafted. That's how good this draft class was. These are just the names of the players that are in the Hall of Fame. You've also got guys like Jermaine O'Neal, Peja Stojakovic, Antoine Walker, Sharif Abdur-Rahim. This class has at least 10 guys that would have gone number 1 in weaker classes. I don't know if we're ever gonna see a draft class stronger than 1996. The only draft class now that I could potentially see being better is the 2018 draft class. Because you got Luka, you got Shai, you got Trae, you got Triple J, you got Jalen Brunson. They're all still pretty early in their careers. We've already got a league MVP and a defensive player of the year. So this class has a long way to go if it wants to outdo 1996, but I definitely think it's in the realm of possibility. All right, thank you for coming to the show. Thank you for being here. Thanks for liking the video. Everyone's been liking the videos, and it's helped. It always does. My light went out. Join the Patreon if you want to. It's $2 a month to get a weekly podcast. Here are the Patreon members. Leave a comment. I am a little bit behind on the comments, but I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna reply to them all. Be good to you, man. Easy to corn dog.